On the latest episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, I welcome first-time guest host Richard Cole of the Amari Purple Talk Podcast. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Welcome, Diane. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm excited to have you on the show because I'm a big fan of your podcast, Amari Purple Talk. I think you do a great job with that show, and I think, if my listeners aren't already familiar with you and what you do, this would be a great opportunity to kind of introduce yourself and explain your show to the listeners, and also maybe a little bit of your background about listening to Prince and how you got into him.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, Amari Purple Talk, it is a podcast about the music and artistry of Prince. It's on your favorite podcast platform, and it is also on YouTube. And I try to broadcast every Monday. I got to record the show on like a Saturday or Sunday and just have it up and available by Monday. So you can check it out every Monday. In fact, starting new episodes next week, April 5th. So be sure to tune in for that. And as far as my interest in Prince, I got involved in 1981. Actually, my interest goes a lot farther back. I remember hearing Soft and Wet on the radio, but every time it was on the radio, it was on this block of songs where they would never say the name of the artist. I would always come in the middle. And then my uncle tried to hit me to the second album, which at the time, Off the Wall was out, and that took a lot of my attention. So I didn't really want to know, but it took a friend of mine bringing over the Dirty Mind album and borrowing my component set to make a dub copy of it. And it was through that I really got a chance to sit and listen to Prince, pay attention, got hooked. A few months later, Controversy came out, and I've been a fan ever since.
Very cool. So from very early on, you were into his music, kind of got in on the ground floor almost, in some ways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Here in St. Louis, it has a very rich musical history. As far as radio, there is a wide diversity of radio stations. At that time, there were at least maybe like 4 black music stations that were available. So both AM and FM. And like I said, where in a lot of cities where, say, like Prince wasn't getting airplay or black music in general wasn't getting a lot of airplay, there was definitely a lot coming through St. Louis.
Yeah, very cool. Now, I don't live there anymore, but I lived in the St. Louis area for 7 years. I've told you this, Richard, but maybe the listeners don't remember. When I started my show, I was living in St. Louis. And one of my favorite record stores, I had several that I went to pretty regularly in the St. Louis area, but one that I went to semi-regularly was Vintage Vinyl in the Loop.
Yes.
And what's interesting there, and it kind of ties back to something that just occurred very recently, was D'Angelo Duff's 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 symposium, and that was a symposium that covered the anniversaries of 3 key albums in Prince's career: the 20th anniversary of the Rainbow Children, 30th anniversary of Diamonds and Pearls, and 40th anniversary of the Controversy album. Mm-hmm. And one of the presentations that occurred on the Controversy Day was Zach Hoskins' presentation about the infamous shower poster that came with the Controversy record back in 1981. And I find it curious or interesting just to tie into that, because he did a whole presentation on the significance of that album and the significance of that poster. But if you go to Vintage Vinyl today, I believe when you walk in, you can look up on the ceiling near the checkout counter. there's that poster they have taped up on the ceiling. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, Richard. If you've been to Vintage Vinyl.
I haven't been, of course, obviously since the lockdown or since the pandemic. But last time I went was actually that record store day. It had to have been maybe 2019, because it was the Versace Experience and then His Majesty's Pop Life that was available record store day.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was the last time I was actually inside of Vintage Vinyl.
Yeah.
So it was still there then.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that they've chosen to display that poster. I think it's really kind of cool. You have to kind of look for it, like I said. You got to look up, but it's there if you're paying attention. Yeah. Okay, well, we're not here to talk about controversy. We're not here to talk about the poster. We're here to talk about Love or Money, or also as it's known as Heart or Dollar Sign.
Right.
Because that is how it was printed on the back of the Kiss single. And that's what this is. This is a B-side. Love or Money was never recorded for, the inclusion on the Parade album. It's only you can only find it as the B-side to Kiss, either the 7 or 12-inch. There's like a radio edit, and there's an extended version on the 12-inch. And it wasn't even included as part of the hits and B-sides collection that was released in 93. For some reason, neither of the Parade era B-sides made it onto that collection. I mean, I know one of them is a instrumental, so that kind of, it makes sense to me that why they wouldn't pick an instrumental, like if they only can pick certain songs, to exclude that one potentially, even though I really do like Alexa de Paris. But with Love or Money, I feel like they missed the opportunity of putting that on there, because it's a really kind of fun, funky song. I dig it. And it was a song I didn't really get at first. And when I say get, I mean I didn't appreciate it. I didn't appreciate what it was intending to do. I thought it sounded really frivolous. I liked my Prince like really deep, and meaningful, and having some interesting things to say about love and the world and race and et cetera, et cetera. Love or Money doesn't really do that. That's not what it's meant to do, in my opinion. It feels like it's just more of a vibe. It's kind of like a fun song to lighten the mood and get some experimentation out there. What are your thoughts on the song in general before we talk about, maybe some of the lyrics or themes?
Well, Jason, it is, I wouldn't say like my top 5. It would be in my top 10 of favorite B-sides form, because I first bought the 45, or the single, and then later got the extended version. And I kind of lean more towards the extended version now. But even when I just had the 45 single, I think I played that more than Kiss, actually, because I just really wanted the album version. And I think at the time, radio was starting to play the extended version of that. So I would just focus on, when it came to my turntable, just playing Love or Money. Yeah. Now, as you were saying that it wasn't available on the hits or the B-sides, I'm thinking it's because when that set was being put together, because notice, of course, Purple Rain is on it, and of course, Purple Rain related material is on it, but Bat Dance isn't on it, and with the exception of maybe Kiss, then none of the other Parade album tracks, singles, or B-sides made that cut either. And I think it might have to do with the licensing of it. Because there's a separate contract for whenever you do anything for a movie soundtrack. And Love or Money, it's actually in the Parade or Under the Cherry Moon film.
Yep.
And it may have been, written for that based on the title, maybe some of the lyrics in it. It does relate to the themes of that movie, but even though it was just regulated to a B-side, it's in the film, and that may have been what tied it up as far as not getting it on the hits or B-sides.
Yeah, you might be onto something there, because I always just kind of thought it was like a personal thing. Like they just didn't think it was worthy of making the collection. They thought everything else was better. And so like if you're putting all of his B-sides from the 80s into the very early 90s onto like a list, and you're trying to pare down which ones. Okay, we can't get all these on a single disc, so what are we going to do? We got to start cutting the fat away. And I just thought maybe they were just thinking these two songs just weren't strong enough to hold up against your Erotic Cities and your 17 Days and your She's Always in My Hairs and your Shockadelica's. I don't know, but you might be onto something, because that perspective actually also makes sense to me. So it'd be interesting to know what the real reason was, if that's the reason why, or if it's they just had to pick something out, and Lover Money got the cut. Not sure.
Yeah, because I don't know. Did he have? I don't know if he even had final say so on the track. Sometimes, did he?
Probably not. I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. I think he wasn't really that into the whole greatest hits compilation to begin with. Yeah. So I can see him not really being too involved in the decisions around that. So yeah, Lover Money is, as you mentioned, featured in the movie. It's the shopping spree scene, right? So
yes, right.
That's the scene where they're Tricky and Christopher are out to spend Mary's money, and she's happily giving it to them, and they all go out and start spending some cash, and they're buying all the fancy clothes and getting a nice car, and it's meant, just to score a really kind of lighthearted, fun scene in the film. There's songs that are meant for more dramatic purposes, and then there's songs like Lover Money that are just meant to elicit the fun vibe that you're seeing, that you're witnessing on the screen at the time. So, Under the Cherry Moon, in its historical context, got a lot of shit from, to put it bluntly, from the critics. Like, it was critically panned, and I think this song even received some sort of nomination for like worst soundtrack song or something. I probably have the category. Oh, wow. Yeah, right. And I think it was just because Under the Cherry Moon was just basically getting crapped on from everybody, that they just were piling it on. So like in the opinion of the critics who were creating these lists of worst actors and worst actresses and worst films, they were also compiling a list of worst soundtrack songs. And listening to Parade, I mean, how are you going to pick any song off that album to be worst? You can't, right? I mean, the whole album's, even the worst song, then though I say worst, and I really mean somebody's least favorite song on Parade, isn't worthy of being like listed as an awful song. But when you're just listening to Lover Money, I could see it in 1986 eyes being a little bit odd to listeners. And I say that because the song seems somewhat repetitive. The lyrics are not anything, worthy of a lot of deciphering or academic research or anything. I mean, when we start going through the lyrics, it's going to be pretty clear, it's not that kind of song. And also, Prince is using an altered voice. And I was struggling to think of times that he had done that prior to Lover Money. Can you think of any instances where Prince that were widely available to listeners in 1986, where he had an altered voice? I mean, yeah, a little bit in automatic, he's got that automatic at times. He adds that sped up voice, but not for the entire song. Can you think of any other examples?
Let's see. Erotic City?
Okay.
That was that was kind of the beginning of that.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know how I blanked on Erotic City. That was a big one, but I just wonder if that turned people off. I wonder, that weren't used to it.
I can see that if you're talking about the type of critics that were sort of picking out the worst soundtrack song. Yes. Again, I agree. They couldn't have pulled anything out of the Parade soundtrack. I mean, that's because Rolling Stone basically labeled him a genius on that. That was sort of the transition from this, one-man band prodigy to absolute genius. And then they started comparing them to Dylan at that point. So when it came time to pick the worst song, they couldn't touch that album at all. So they had to pick on the B-side.
Yeah, and under the Cherry Moon does, as we've talked about already, does feature this song in it, so one can extract Love or Money from the movie to kind of highlight it if one wanted to. And I think it's just, and also maybe a little bit was expectations were at a certain level. He had released a really kind of introspective, deep album with Around the World in a Day prior, with songs like The Ladder. And even if you didn't like it, even if you weren't into the message behind songs like The Ladder and Temptation, talking about Paisley Park and Pop Life, songs that in America, songs that have something to say, you know, not every song has to say something, but when you start doing that, and then you go back and then you kind of lyrically regress, as one might look at it, it might be perceived as lazy songwriting or something less than what it actually is. That's not in my opinion. I'm just trying to think of reasons why a song like Love or Money might be singled out as a song that is considered, you know, unworthy of Prince's talent to some people. But I don't want to, you know, dwell on it too much, because at the end of the day, it's irrelevant, and we both like the song, so I guess
right.
That's, you know, and we're here talking about it, so let's get into it. Unless you have anything else you want to add to that conversation about its context in 1986 Prince.
I mean, as far as the critics and the worst movie part, now I'm ready to talk about what we love about this track. And, you know, and like you said, it's not like lyrically heavy, but there's some merit to it because it was written for the film. And some of those, and there's a couple of lines in the song or even in the hook of the song that, you know, were echoed in some of the dialogue in the film too, or it kind of helped push the narrative. So yeah, I'm ready to talk about that.
Yeah, let's do that then. Yeah. So Love or Money was originally, according to Prince Vault, and I use them as kind of like my Bible for recording dates. And we all know some things, sometimes it can be incorrect, and it's only as good as the information that's given to the folks there. But I got it as a July 1985 recording date. So that what that tells me is by the summer of 85, you know, they were ready to film the movie. They hadn't started filming yet, but I imagine the script was complete, or at least as complete it was going to be until they started filming, and they probably made some adjustments on the fly. But a final draft of the script was written. They probably had done all the storyboards, scouting locations, ready to go, right? So for this song to be written in the summer of 85 tells me also, to your point, that I think the song was written solely for the movie. Like Prince had the movie in mind for sure. And I don't think every song that ended up on Parade was written with the movie in mind. Some of them were just kind of shoehorned in. But to me, Love or Money is a very clear soundtrack song, even though it didn't end up on the soundtrack, which is, you know, one of those kind of silly things. But I just wanted to point that out. And then also, it's interesting to me because this is also around. So Prince had already just recorded, I believe, the Family album around this time. So that was Eric Leeds' kind of first introduction into the Prince camp, was on the Family as part of the Family project. But this is the first, if I got my dates correct, time that he's on a Prince song, an officially recorded Prince song. It's around this time, like it's either the first or one of the first times that we hear Eric Leeds. And actually, if you're thinking about it, maybe it wasn't the first time you recorded a Prince song, but if you're buying the Kiss single in early '86 before the Parade album is even released, that's going to be your first time you hear Eric Leeds on a Prince song, because the album hadn't been released yet. So I think that's kind of something worth pointing out.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I can't wait until Dwayne Tuhal's book about the parade and Sign of the Time session drops, because I think that'll clearly put in place, the context of, Love or Money, when that was recorded, what was recorded before that, ahead of the Parade album. Let's see, who else? Because I think they were still working on Jill Jones at that point, too.
Yeah, Jill's album was in development for quite a while before it was finally released.
Yes. Yeah. Romance 1600, that would have been practically finished by then. Yeah. So, but that was Eddie M on sax on a lot of her stuff. But,
yep.
The family stuff was like during Purple Rain, the beginning of it, anyway.
Yeah. Like they had the album ready to go before this song was released. It's just in terms of like a Prince and the Revolution song, it'd be interesting to know if this was the first or which, kind of what order that Eric was brought in to record on a Prince song. All right, so the song starts off just basically repeating the title. You've got, I believe it's Wendy and Lisa and maybe Susanna on vocals doing this part where they're just saying love or money.
Yeah.
And those are really the first lines you hear of the song, is just the women singing love or money. Just the title of the song. Before we get Prince chiming in his sped up vocals, like Erotic City. God, I still am annoyed that I couldn't. I totally blanked over that song as being an earlier example of him using the sped up voice, but whatever, I'll get over it. So the first lines of the song are, "Baby, nothing comes for free now. If you want to be with me now, what's it gonna be now? Is it love or money?" So I guess for me, like, this song almost feels like it belongs more either on a Camille project or the Black album. And I don't know, maybe not the Black album, because the vibe is a bit sunnier than a lot of the songs on that album ended up being. And I can see why Prince did not include it on Parade. I think just the tone of the song, how it's recorded, how it's presented, is a little different. It's a little different than the rest of the album. The rest of the album kind of has like this sophisticated air about it, with the orchestration at times, and the suite at the beginning has kind of like a theme to it, and then you move to like songs that you've got instrumentals for the first time in a Prince project, and Love or Money just feels like an outlier a little bit to me, and I could see, even though it totally fits in the movie, as we talked about, I think leaving it off of the Parade album was probably a conscious decision, because the tone was just maybe a little different than the rest of the project. But in terms of like these lyrics, Prince is just using a very basic kind of rhyme pattern here. Nothing come for free now. If you want to be with me now, ending each line with the word now. But he's asking, he only asked a couple questions. He asked more questions later in the song. It's a lot of questions. Most of the lines in the song end in a question mark, and a lot of deep hypothetical questions he's asking somebody about, making decisions essentially. And Richard, would you mind kind of bringing up the context of the film and like how you see lines like this fitting in with what's going on in the movie Under the Cherry Moon?
Let's see, because that was at the beginning of Christopher Tracy and Mary Sharon's relationship, I guess. The point, where she was she kind of stopped being aloof to him and was sort of beginning to kind of embrace kind of his worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, of course, they're still celebrating her birthday. And of course, Dad gives her a big wad of cash, and she's like, "What am I going to do with this?" And
yep, and then we find out what they end up doing with it.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I just like the whole, with the concept behind Prince is singing the song, right? And he's posing the questions, but you can almost take these lines to be kind of asked by Mary as well in some ways.
That's
if you want to be with me, what's it going to be? Is it love or is it money? Because she's the one with the money, not him. So if Christopher's singing this line, is it love or money? Yeah, I can see it both ways, because I guess you can also think of it from the standpoint, like if he's asking her to love or money, basically saying you might have to leave your money behind in order to be with me, because your dad's not going to approve of this relationship and you're not going to get your inheritance. But that kind of, especially early on in the movie, as you were referring to, that would go totally against what Christopher's all about, because he's all about the money, early on in the film. That's how they meet. He's after her money.
Right. Yeah. He was definitely about getting paid for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I guess listening to it, when it's on your turntable in 1986, I didn't make the connection that, he's singing as the Christopher Tracy character on that song. So it's weird because it's like, okay, it's Prince. He's using the sped up vocal. We find out later the song is in the film. It's part of the montage. But yeah, I mean, because the lyrics kind of echo some of the themes of the film, yeah, is he singing as a character, or is he sort of kind of spelling out the duality between both characters, Christopher Tracy and Mary Sharon? Because you can attach those lyrics to both. Yes, like you said, she has the money. And to be with Christopher, she has to do without it. And then he's all about getting paid. But to explore love, then it's not about money or materialistic things, to which he would have to give up or come to an understanding about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more I'm thinking of it, the more I'm thinking that really it's the song and the lyrics speak to that duality and that's like one of the central struggles in the film is love or money, because you can go after one or the other, but oftentimes it is a decision that has to be made, at least in the context of what's going on in the French Riviera in this film. You've got the upper class and you've got the working class. And yeah, Christopher also plays piano, and we know that he's a musician and is able to earn some money that way, but it's not, the kind of money that he wants in order to live the lifestyle that he's accustomed to, being basically boy toy for these rich older women. Yeah, so the duality really, to me, fits the theme, even if like every line as we go through it doesn't, you can't maybe apply a specific moment in a film for a specific line. I think probably what Prince was doing when he was writing this was, because this, as I imagine, and by July of '85, I'd like to hope that the script was already mostly done, so they knew where it was going to go. They knew what the central themes of the film were going to be, and how can you describe Under the Cherry Moon to somebody who's never seen it without kind of speaking to the dilemmas that the two lovers face throughout? It's Christopher Tracy having to choose between love or money, because he falls in love with somebody that he wasn't expecting to fall in love with. Right. And, ultimately he would have to make that choice to be with her, knowing that she was probably going to lose her inheritance by running away with him. And so then if he was going to be with her, then he couldn't obviously continue with his relationships with Mrs. Wellington or anybody else that was giving him what he needed financially on the side. So he had to make that choice, and so did she. So anyway, I think you're right on the nose with that. The duality is really what the song kind of speaks to, more so than and trying to apply the lyrics to fit the different characters' perspectives throughout the film. All right, so the next grouping of lines is, tell me what's your name, what's your claim to fame? You see, I don't like silly games. Is it love or is it money? So with these lines, Richard, anything that you wanted to call out here or anything unique about these?
That one, Yeah, that one is definitely, I would say, the Mary Sharon part of the song. I think that's from her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's how it comes across, when it's read out that way. That's the first thing that popped in my head, was that that's definitely her. Because it's like, who are you? Where do you come from? And, she wasn't about entertaining any type of, frivolous or superficial relationship.
Yeah, she wasn't with the foolishness that Christopher, and at least not at first. She wasn't about
Right.
the foolishness that Christopher and Tricky presented to her when they crashed her party. I mean, she called him out pretty early on,
Right.
and told him basically to get the hell out, because she saw right through their plans, their scheme. And the line, "I don't like silly games," kind of speaks to that. I could see her saying that, her character saying a line like that, "I don't like silly games," because she wasn't at first amused by their personalities and, what they were about and who they were. Took a while to warm up to it. "Tell me what's on your mind. Are we just making time? Will our spirits rhyme? Is it love or money?" So yeah, I mean, again, with these lines, Prince is doing the simple rhyme thing again: mind, time, rhyme,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to name, fame, game. And with these, yeah, I get kind of more of a like bedroom talk kind of situation. What's on your mind, wanting to know what the other person is thinking, while kind of in that cuddle moment, post sex or post intimacy. Are we just making time? It's just more like making time, meaning, are we just fooling around? Does this have any meaning behind it? Do you feel anything for me, or are we just making time here? It's kind of an old-fashioned way of putting it, but that's what I get from it. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, that goes back to is that Goffin and King, Jerry Goffin, Carole King, writing, Will You Love Me Tomorrow for the Shirelles.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for pop music even back then. Those very questions. But, what they did in an entire song, Prince has on the B-side. But how many sentences was that? Like 3?
Yeah, right.
Three sentences, right.
Basically distills that whole concept down to this one verse in this B-side, because he's talking about several. I mean, the song goes in a few different directions. Like, first we're talking about just the general concepts behind love or money and what the kind of choices that need to be made, and then it's talking more about introducing oneself to another, and how that can be, how one's first impression can be a little misleading, especially if your first impression is maybe coming from the perspective of somebody trying to get over on another person, and that's not usually a very it's not a very good first impression that's made there. But she's able to get past it, and in the third verse we get the impression that that they've been together now, and it's kind of like, now what is it? And we keep advancing this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You meet, you have a little conversation, then you're intimate. Now what? Will our spirits rhyme? I think it's just kind of a unique way of basically saying, are our souls aligned? Will we? Is this a relationship that has legs? Is this gonna go anywhere?
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to mention about that, Richard?
No, that pretty much sums it up on, at least, on those 3 lines. I was thinking too, with those, I wonder if that was originally intended for, because you really didn't have maybe the family, if they were able to gel, or was that written for like maybe Susanna to sing in the film? Because I think she was supposed to be in it originally.
Yeah, she was. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, so I wonder if at the beginning that song was intended for her, but then later, because even Prince wasn't originally the director. I know he wrote the script,
mm-hmm.
but he didn't intend to direct it at first. So I think in the middle of when he took over as director, maybe that song got swapped out for, say, like maybe Girls and Boys or something. Because that kind of has that upbeat flavor. It also has Eric on the sax, too.
Yeah.
And then,
good point.
Yeah, and maybe just Love or Money was just kept in the film just to fit that montage. But Girls and Boys being the better song. And I think it ended up being like the centerpiece, didn't it?
Oh yeah, there's that whole dance scene at the restaurant. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It is definitely a centerpiece song. Where Love or Money, I don't think could ever really fit that.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't. Love it as a B-side, but it wasn't strong enough to have that kind of a place in the film.
Right. Okay, so then the next section of lines, Prince is actually now no longer singing these lines. He's kind of like speaking them more or less, right? So I'm going to shake my hips to the east, shake my hips to the west, till you make up your mind that my hip is the best. Okay.
So listen.
All right. What do you got to say about that one, Richard?
I don't know. That sounds more like Christopher Tracy than the Mary Sharon character. I'll lean towards that being more Christopher Tracy.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the musical equivalent to the record store scene right there.
Absolutely.
That's Prince and James Brown mode at that point.
To my hip is the best. Yep. It's reading them aloud. It's out of the context of the song, without the music behind it, without the lead up of everything else that's led up to this point of the song. It sounds silly, just me saying, shake my hip to the west, make up your mind that my hip is the best. But I think, Prince is dabbling a little bit with a little bit of kind of early hip hop, rap style. He'd done that. He had written, that Sheila E. song for the Crush Groove soundtrack.
Holly Rock.
Holly Rock, thank you. So that song, pretty much straight up hip hop, right? I mean, she's basically rapping on that song, so rap singing. So this isn't the first time, but he's dabbling a little bit in it. There's songs where he'll stop singing and do some sort of pseudo rapping. Irresistible Bitch is another one where he takes that approach. And in 1985, 86, the genre was obviously it had been around for a while, but it wasn't in the mainstream quite the way it would be in a few more years. The crossover acts, Run DMC, Beastie Boys hadn't even really crossed over yet by 85, so there were few and far between crossover acts. So he was trying to stay on top of some of the more cutting edge trends in music, and incorporating stuff like this into songs, especially if you're going to relegate it to a B-side. It's a win-win situation, or really it's more of a no-lose situation. If it doesn't come off all that great, no big loss. It's just a B-side. I was just trying something new. But if it does, he's a genius, right? For incorporating rap elements into a song back in 1985, when hardly any pop acts were doing that. Of course, Shaka Khan and Melly Mel were doing it a year before, and I Feel For You. But then, hey, that's a Prince song, right? So I mean, he's kind of associated with even that aspect of it, when it was a massive crossover for I Feel For You. Of course, he didn't have anybody rapping on his 1979 version, but damn, if it didn't sound great on Shaka Khan's version. So yeah, I just kind of like the way that he delivers some of these. He's just adding just that element, that kind of more street element, hip hop element, urban element to the song. And the song has a lot of that already. I mean, it's pure funk, up and down. I think Parade sometimes gets maligned for not being funky enough, for being too avant-garde or what have you. And obviously not every song. Girls and Boys is in Mountains, and there's others as well. But Kiss is funky. Shit.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
That's a funky song. So people who are like saying that are just like looking at maybe some of the more orchestral pieces like Under the Cherry Moon or Do You Lie or the instrumental song. The name is Venus de Milo. So yeah, I think it's a nice ad. I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to mention about these lines, Richard?
To me, I think as far as the song, that's when it kind of makes that transition. To me, it goes into that total James Brown mode from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, or no, actually, it kind of, or it's kind of the beginning. It's sort of like the first, what are you going to call it? The first kind of break or bridge. Then it goes back into the questions. And then it goes, if you're listening to the extended version, then it just goes completely into just total James Brown mode at that point.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because after the lines that I just read, the next ones are, I said, baby, let me take you by the hand, make you understand that I ain't no silly man. Gotta let me know, is it love or is it money? So he jumps back into that style for this next line of verses. And, talking about ain't no silly man, that's a callback to the second verse when he says, I don't like silly games. So he's basically trying to reassure Mary, if we're thinking of it as Under the Cherry Moon, that he is not silly. Don't worry. You don't like silly games? I'm not a silly man, so you don't have anything to worry about there. Let me make you understand. You've got to let me know, is it love or is it money? So the constant, the demand for an answer to this question, is it love or is it money? And the song never answers the question because it's not really intended to do that. It's just posing the question, knowing that there's this dilemma that exists out there throughout the film, and it needs to be addressed. It has to be addressed in order for there to be, closure to the plot. Well, the closure is death, but I mean, he had made a choice. They had made a collective choice. They were going to pick love over money. That's how he was going to go until, of course, he again gets killed. But they had to make that choice, and the choice had to be made before he could die. So that way, when Christopher dies at the end of the film, you already kind of knew he was on that path towards to marry and to choose love over money. And so that we don't get the answer in the song, but we get the answer in the film, I guess.
Later in the narrative.
Yep, exactly. All right, so then in just the normal 7-inch version, the version that was on the 7-inch single for Kiss, he just says some of the lines again, same lines that he had already repeated. Nothing comes for free now. If you want to be with me now, what's it going to be now? Is it love or money? And some of the lines are starting to, as the song starts to fade out, you hear more words. He says, listen, talk a little, take you by the hand, make you understand that ain't no silly man. Those are the lines that are being said, which is also a reiteration of previous lines. And so then it goes into a fade out for the 7-inch version. Then we get the 12-inch version. And I have the 12-inch on vinyl. I don't have a digital version of the 12-inch. I need to get one so I can listen to it a little bit easier than popping it into my record player.
Yeah, I know they have it in I think both Amazon and Apple. In Japan, you can get it.
Nice.
Yeah, but here it's just the 45 of the single version.
Yep. So there's actually quite a few more lyrics that are associated with the 12-inch version, and this is like more of like as you were referring to, full James Brown now, and the rest of the song in the 12-inch version is just really just extension of the music, getting into some more kind of pseudo rapping lyrics, just talking over the music a bit. I'll read the lines. We don't have to go through them line by line, but I'll read them just for the listeners who maybe aren't familiar with it, and there's no printed lyrics, and I'm just reading them off of transcribed on the internet, so hopefully these are accurate. He was bad, he was fresh. All the women say he was the best. He had money up to his neck, but it didn't mean a heck. The boy was in need of some diehard pussy. The kind of drawers that last. Heck-a-buff, good God, I want ya. All right, so we don't have to dissect all those lines, but it's definitely taking a different tone lyrically now in the 12-inch. Like we're not into this whole simple rhyming patterns. I mean, he does have some obviously simple rhyming patterns, best, neck, heck, but it's not the same structure. He doesn't have like the 3 lines and then the chorus, 3 lines and the chorus, 3 lines and chorus like he was doing before. And these lines really don't have much to do with the narrative of the song up to this point, or even the narrative of, well, I mean, sure, you could apply them to the narrative of the film if you're just talking about, the Playboy aspect of Christopher Tracy singing these, that makes sense, sure. But, the whole love or money part, no, it doesn't really vibe with that love or money theme anymore. He's just kind of extending on the previous side with the shake my hips to the east and west. It's more like that. It's more in that vein, in that style. What do you agree with that, Richard, or do you have any different insight on what's going on in the 12-inch version?
If you look at it from, if we're analyzing the track, where the questions are brought up, throughout most of the song, and then kind of on the 12-inch single as it's kind of going towards the vamp, towards the end, then it's the thing of either he's like in denial, sort of, and he's just going to hold on to that character, or he's hiding behind the character and doesn't want to answer the question. Or if the entire track is completely from Christopher Tracy's perspective, then going back to the beginning of the song with the whole, what's it going to be now? That was sort of that Prince time vocabulary. Introduced, I think, either in Controversy. I think Controversy, where you started hearing that, what's it going to be? And then you start to hear it on Ice Cream Castles with Morris Day. And I think that just became part of their sort of language, the personal hip language that they had. I know we used to run around and, pinch some of those lines too, what's it going to be? And, I can't remember some of the other ones, but that one was a key one that, we used to say in our little musician artist circles too a lot, trying to emulate what they were doing a lot. But getting back to the end of it, if it's Christopher Tracy, sort of asking the questions, whether he's posing it to her or because he's encountered her, asking those questions of himself. And this is where it's probably going to get deep, because if it goes in that direction, if he's kind of trying to figure out that end of it, then yeah, he's probably slipping into denial mode at that point. Like, no, I can't lose myself in this relationship. Oh, no, that's too deep of a question. So I'm going to go and, I'm going to slip back into my Christopher Tracy persona and just kind of be the pimp gigolo and not get into my real feelings.
Yeah, because that's really what the vibe I'm getting from these lines is he is almost regressed a little bit back into the Christopher Tracy that we meet at the beginning of the film, as opposed to the Christopher Tracy that exists at the end of the film. So, and I think it's funny, the line, he had money up to his neck. I don't know. I mean, I get the impression that I'm not saying he's living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, because he doesn't. I mean, he has a paycheck, steady paycheck with the gig he's got, piano gig, but I never get the impression that Christopher Tracy is, rich or has a lot of money. That's why he is in constant search for women with money, because he needs it. And that's how he gets his money. So if he was independently wealthy, why would he be doing what he's doing? So I think it's just more of like he's, like a persona that he's putting on here, to play up his attributes or just to make himself seem more fly than he maybe is. I mean, he's pretty fly, but but he doesn't have the money. I mean, that's kind of like the whole thing is he needs the money from the women. And that's
the thing there where, from a hip hop perspective, that kind of those kind of bragging rights, that was always there at the beginning of hip hop, where, you probably didn't live like that. You may have had a job, may not have had a job, but it was just nice to fantasize, or in the case of if you're the MC, lyrically, you want to be the person on top. So you're going to brag about, kind of like Rapper's Delight, having checkbooks, heavy cars, more money than any sucker could ever spend. Yep. That's the DNA of hip hop. And it kind of translates into R&B too. And by the 80s, we've encountered the Morris Day persona, to where during the symposium we were talking about the song Cool. That was kind of an offshoot of hip hop bragging, even in that song. With the penthouse in Manhattan, 2 more in Malibu.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely. The Morris Day persona in Purple Rain film and on record is exactly that. We see him in his apartment, getting ready to go out to the club at the beginning of Purple Rain, and he's not living the lifestyle that he portrays to be living when he's talking up Apollonia and trying to get her in bed. He doesn't have all that stuff, so we know that is the persona that he's playing up, and of course, the Morris Day character was largely developed by Prince, so it makes sense that he continues on, even though Morris Day and Prince aren't exactly on the best of terms in 1985. This whole idea of Tricky and Christopher, you can apply a lot of the same kind of characteristics and personality traits that Morris Day had in Purple Rain to these characters as well, I think. They're not identical, but they do have some similar traits. We could play for days. If you get tired, give me that mayonnaise. Revolution, put the groove on the bus. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about us. He says that again a couple times. Out of town, Lord, don't worry about us. So, give me that Vaseline. I gotta slide. The girls know what I mean. So yeah, it's just fun lyrics that don't add anything to the narrative of the song or the film, but it makes the 12-inch interesting, I think, and it makes the song, the extended version, interesting in a way that the 7-inch is perfectly fine. I like it a lot, but God, the 12-inch is just, you just got to go with it every time if you have a choice. I don't know how you don't. Unless you don't like the song, you just want the shorter version. Then you go with the 7-inch, I guess. So that brings us basically to the end of the song. Richard, do you have any final thoughts you wanted to bring up or talk about here about love or money? Something we didn't touch on already that you wanted to make sure that you had a chance to talk about?
That's about it. Like I said, I'm anxious whenever they do a Parade Super Deluxe edition. I can't wait for everybody to hear the 12-inch version if they don't have it or don't have access to it.
Yeah, I want that for all the 12 inches too. I mean, not everybody has access to them. I have them for the most part. I don't have digital versions of all of them though, and that's kind of where, that's on me. I could have gotten them by now if I wanted them, but I've also been kind of waiting for a Parade Super Deluxe like you, and I'm just like, why buy them now if I think this thing is coming out? Why buy them off Apple Music or Amazon when I think this thing is coming out soon? At least that's what my hopes are.
Well,
but
I would say, if any vinyl fans out there, actually you can still get 12-inch single, I think, on vinyl.
Yeah, Kiss was reissued, I believe.
Yeah, around 2015. So if, go to your local record store and pick it up.
For sure. It's worth it. Absolutely. All right, Richard. So how can people find you? Can you just tell them maybe like if you have any social media handles you wanted to share with everybody on on the show?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter and be found at RichardCole_now, and the now is in all caps. And on Instagram at RichardCole_Amari.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Richard. I really appreciate your insight on this song. Really appreciate you agreeing to be on my show. Hopefully you'll be back sometime.
Oh, yeah. Let me know. Anytime.
Cool. All right. So this has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. You can get a hold of me at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Press Rewind Pod. You can also check out the blog, pressrewind.net, and contact me there. I try to do some writings on there every once in a while on some of the songs that I'm covering or just general things on music. So happy to hear from anybody who's enjoying the show and what you like about it, or if you have any recommendations for improvements, always open to that as well. Give it a rate on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. You can find it anywhere. And I appreciate all of my listeners. And until next time, goodbye.